So we're going to go ahead and thread a rotary bobbin case, making sure that the thread is coming off of the right hand side of the bobbin when we're looking at it, when we're facing it. So it goes in just like that. It's just like a push-in 15 class style bobbin that has the little finger on top. A rotary bobbin does not. Now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and pop our thread through that little groove on the front. Okay. Let's see if I can focus that so we can really see. And then we're going to go ahead and pull it up into the opening for the tensioner. So we are good to go. Right? And you can see right away that just drops really fast. So what we have here is actually, I can tell, a very light bobbin thread tension, or a very loose bobbin thread tension. We should be able to pick it up in our hand and it shouldn't leave, but it should be a little bit tighter. So we're going to go ahead and tighten that down a little bit. Okay, and when I make that adjustment, I'll show you. We're going to take our tension screwdriver, or this is like a, you know, basic kind of precision screwdriver, pretty basic tool to have at your bench. And then we're going to go ahead, make the adjustment. You can see the screw. And we're just going to go ahead and turn that screw about 1/8 of a turn, or about 10 minutes if it was a clock, to tighten that up. And then we're going to test it again for a rotary hook. Remember, it should be in the palm of my hand. Stand up. Okay. And it should fall back down, so that's a little bit too tight. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen it by about 5 minutes, so I'm kind of in between where I was before. Still a little bit tight. So we'll go ahead and we're going to make just a tiny little turn. Doesn't take very much, right? Look at that, perfect. So now it stands up, doesn't leave my hand. Now this is different than a push-in style 15 class bobbin. Those don't, this same method does not apply. This is for a rotary style hook, which has a different, it has a lower tension value than an oscillating hook that rocks back and forth to grab the thread, instead of a rotary hook like this that turns in a 360-degree motion. Okay, so now we can go ahead and put our bobbin in, and we're going to get started with our initial test. We're going to replace the needle. So if we make the adjustment up here, we can see we can go minus, or we can turn it up and go plus for a higher tension. And what the tension is doing with that is it's changing how much it's pinching the thread, either more or less, depending on this value here, this little disc up here. There's actually 2 discs and one in the middle, pushing together on the thread to create tension, which is changed by the spring tension that we're changing here by shifting this. Okay, and you can actually see this on the bottom. When I turn this dial, it's making it looser. Now it's making it tighter. So that's good. All right, that's our upper tension adjustment. But when you balance tensions for the customer, we want it to be on the factory setting on the middle as best we can, and then we'll adjust a bobbin tension to make an adjustment to balance the stitch. So to make a bobbin case adjustment, we'll go ahead and take out our bobbin case, and we can see where the adjustment happens is right here on that little screw. And it's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Okay? And it doesn't take much to change this. And we can see from our initial test how the stitch looks on the back and the front, I would consider this a balanced stitch. Because the threads contrast, you can see a little bit of the red in the needle hole where the needle punched through, but it's not really pulling up to the top. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you what an unbalanced tension would look like. We're actually going to loosen this so the top tension, the white thread, pulls up and pulls the red thread to the top. Okay? I'll illustrate that. Like I said, it doesn't take a lot to change a tension value. I'm using a 00 screwdriver, flat blade, to go ahead and make this adjustment. So we're going to go ahead and make our adjustment. And I'm going to turn this. We're actually going to go 1 full revolution counterclockwise. So we'll go ahead and we're going to do a full rotation. Counterclockwise means loose, and that is loose. See that? It won't even stand up on my hand when I pull up. It just comes out. That's too loose. But let's go ahead and test and see what that actually looks like. So when we have a situation where we can see the bobbin thread coming up to the top like this, we've intentionally changed the bobbin tension, but the standard upper tension up here is on its standard setting. What we know is that the bobbin tension is actually too loose, and so it's coming to the top. Okay, we can look at the bottom and see the bobbin thread is right there, but the upper thread is pulling up the bottom thread, so it's too loose. So now what we're going to do is we'll reverse the adjustment so we can see the difference. So here's the screw. We're going to turn that screw in back to the setting it was at before. And before, we could see when I picked up the bobbin case, when it was in my hand, it would not stand up. Now it will actually leave my hand. So for an oscillating bobbin, or a system where the hook turns back and forth like we see in the Berninas, the bobbin tension is usually generally tight enough that you can hold the bobbin in your hand and it will actually leave the hand and it won't drop. That's pretty normal. So let's go ahead and test that. Okay, and tension balancing is going to be within a certain range usually. So we want to get the tension to be in a certain range in general. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and pull up that bobbin thread. And we're going to test again, and we'll see the difference here. Now what we can see, because I have red thread in the bobbin and white thread on top, there's a little bit of thread, but see the difference from where we've tightened up our tension. And look at that, it still is looking very consistent on both sides. So that's really what we want it to look like. We want the stitch to tie in the middle of the fabric, like right in the middle of the fabric. With red thread, we might see a little bit of that where the hole from the needle pierced it. So this is balanced tension. This is what it looks like. Now this was when the bobbin thread was too loose. So I'm going to show you what happens when the bobbin thread is too tight. We're going to tighten up this bobbin thread. So it's overly tight, and you can see it doesn't even take a full rotation to really change the tension values of a bobbin case. Adjustments only happen usually by 5 or 10 minutes at a time to balance the tension. So what we'll see now is the difference here, where we see only the top thread on top. On the bottom, we can see that the top thread, it's hard to see kind of, but that white thread is really pulling. We can see the top thread pulling down. So if we see top thread pulling down, that means the tension's too tight. So we want to go ahead and loosen it. And I'm going to set it back to normal. Now, the thing to keep in mind about balancing thread tensions now we can see here it is pulling up a little bit of that red thread, so I'm just going to make it a little bit tighter. And we can see it's pulling down a little bit more. We're going to make it a little bit tighter. And I'm only doing about a 10-minute turn clockwise to tighten it up. And now the stitch is looking the same on the bottom as it is on top. Okay, now something to consider about Bernina machines, or most precision machines, is that the machine, when it's a precision machine like a Bernina, your stitch on the bottom, like the zigzag, will look pretty much the same on the bottom as it does on top. You may see a little bit of the bobbin thread if it's contrasting colors, but when you do your final sew out, you need to use the same color threads for your final sew out because it gives a better customer experience, okay? As long as the stitch is tying into the fabric on both sides with the Bernina machine, you're good to go, okay? On lower end machines like Singer's, Walmart Brother machines, Janome machines, machines that don't have as good a tolerances as these, or not as good a quality machine, you will see that in a zigzag, one side of the stitch on the bottom, the bottom thread comes over a little bit, okay? And that's normal on those machines. You'll never get a really good stitch quality like a Bernina where the stitch looks the same on the bottom as it does on top with a cheaper machine. So don't try to continue to balance tensions up or down with your bobbin case on a factory setting if it looks like it's just pulling on one side, but it's pretty much balanced for the most part. You're good to go. You don't have to overcomplicate this adjustment. This is not an adjustment to overcomplicate. You simply don't want it to look exaggerated like this, where the thread tensions look really bad, where it's really pulling up, or where you can see visibly that the thread tensions are pulling down too much because it's too tight. The bobbin case is too tight, okay? But the stitch is tying in the middle of the fabric in general is what we want. And your bobbin case adjustments will only be a little bit one way or the other way, okay? So it's kind of a general adjustment. You should not spend more than 1 or 2 minutes on this kind of adjustment. If you're going back and forth a lot, you need to ask for help from a higher level technician with more experience than you have, so you know what you're doing. Because if you're balancing tensions back and forth and you can't seem to get it right, there may actually be other problems with the machine that need to be identified, and you shouldn't be working on it. So if you're doing tension adjustments, it should be a quick adjustment on the bobbin case one way or the other on the normal setting. If you're working on a machine that has a dial, you can set it to a 4 usually. If it's 1 through 9, you go to a 4, and that's in the middle. Then you make your bobbin case adjustments, okay? So you want to be at the factory setting or the normal setting, then balance the tensions from there, all right? So we balanced our tensions. We got a nice looking stitch. I'm actually going to do the final sew out right now. We're going to go ahead and do our sew out because we're getting a very nice stitch, so we can go ahead and do that while the machine is stitching nicely. We're going to take a 15 class bobbin at our bench here with some white thread on it. We're going to match our threads, and remember again, at the bench the best thing to use is a 50 weight polyester thread, okay, like I have a spool of Mettler thread here. And we're going to go ahead and I have a empty 15 class bobbin, And we're going to go ahead and put that here. Now, let's say you have a bobbin that has a little bit of thread on it, but you need to wind a different color because you need to match your colors on the sew out or the sample that go with the machine. Don't use contrasting colors for your final sew out like we did for the testing, all right? Or like we did for balancing tensions. You're going to match your colors for the test. So you can take a screwdriver and put the bobbin on the screwdriver. You're going to put your thumb on the other side so it spins. And now we're going to go ahead, take the vacuum cleaner and turn it on. And we're going to suck that thread off. You want to see that? Now see how okay, so see how I actually closed the gap on the hose with my fingers to create more of a suction path that really sucked the thread in. Until I really did that, it really didn't pull it off all the way. But this is just a fast way we can unthread a bobbin if we need to go ahead and match our threads, okay? So it should be, that's just a really quick way so you don't have to sit there pulling thread off of your bobbin. With these kinds of bobbins, they usually have a slot in the middle. So you can poke the thread up through the slot. And you'll see when I did that, I actually took the thread and folded it on itself and twisted it so we can go ahead and put it up through there. Pull that through, put the bobbin on. Okay, and then we're going to push over to activate this. This machine also has a clutch. The clutch wheel back here, we're going to grip the hand wheel and then rotate this counterclockwise to loosen that in the middle. Okay. Now the whole machine should not run while I run it to wind a bobbin. Go ahead and stop for a second. Okay, we're going to put a new needle in because our other needle is bad. Put that up all the way. Then we're going to thread up our new needle. We know the needle threader is working great. We tested that already. Sometimes I just thread needle out of habit. Then we're going to fold this over so we have 2 layers of our red material. We're going to go to a straight stitch. And we'll stitch part of the way down. Reverse to make sure the reverse works. That's reversing great. When we get further down, we'll reverse again. That's looking good. Flip this around. We're going to go back to a zigzag, the number 6. But we're just going to do it at a 3. We're not going to do a full width. This is a presentation for the customer to see that the machine's stitching nice. So we're just going to do a normal width zigzag that looks great. The widest zigzag sometimes will pull a little bit on the bottom. We want to make this look really nice for them. And we can actually see we got some tension problems. And it's because we have a really thick thread in the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and wind up a little bit more of our bench thread here to see if we can get an accurate measure of what's going on with our thread. And I'm cheating a little bit here. I just took my thread from the eye of the needle and thread the bobbin. And I'm just winding a little bit of thread on the bobbin. We don't need to wind a lot of thread onto the bobbin to do a test. That way I have the same thread on top and bottom, and I'm actually testing with a spool of 50 weight polyester. It's a good thread to test with. This is a white thread too. Sometimes black threads actually have a higher tension value because of the dyeing of the thread. We're going to try again and see. take a look at our stitch here. See, and what we have is an issue here. It's pulling down quite a bit. So we're going to go ahead and balance our tensions. We have the top tension set on a 4. This goes from a 0 to a 9. So we're going to set it on a 4, which is the factory setting. And we're going to take our bobbin case out to make the adjustment on the bobbin case. Now remember, with tension balancing, if it looks like the stitch is pulling down too much, we want to loosen our bobbin tension to fix that problem. And on a machine like this, like a Janome, you will see blow some of that debris out of there so we can do our test accurately. You will see on a Janome that these aren't really a precision machine. There's a lot of play and tolerance in the hook and the position fingers. There may be a little bit of pulling on specifically one side of the stitch in a zigzag, so that's kind of normal. But the problem is that that's a lot. That's too much. Okay? And on our initial test here, we can actually see the same thing happening, where it's pulling kind of on one side quite a bit at that full width. It's even tunneling the fabric. That means that it actually pulled it together. It's a lot of bottom tension, so we're going to change the tension on our bobbin case. Okay? So to make a adjustment on a drop-in style bobbin case, this is very common on Brother, Baby Lock, and Janome machines. You'll see there's a leaf spring where the thread gets threaded through right here. And there's going to be a little screw right here to make the adjustment. Now, for what we're looking at here, this is the bottom, this is the top. It's pulling quite a bit on the bottom. We're going to make an adjustment at a half a turn. So you'll see what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and rotate this by just half a turn. And that was that black screw right there. This screw you don't adjust because it actually holds this whole piece in place. The tension screw is always just by the leaf spring where the thread actually comes in right here. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead, put our bobbin case back in. These are kind of a pain in the butt because you have to take your screws on and off every time you do a test. So I usually will tighten them up by hand, and then use my fingernail to just tighten them down enough so that the plate won't vibrate or rattle. And then we're going to go ahead and thread our bobbin, which this has a little guide you can go under, and then you follow it around and it actually cuts the thread for you. So that's nice. Now let's take a look at our tensions again. We're going to go ahead and stitch and see if we can't get a better stitch. We'll do another run on our test fabric here. And we can see that we still have a tension problem. So we still have tension issues after making a full half turn adjustment on our bobbin case tension where it's pulling down too much. So what we want to do is find out why we have a lower tension issue on this machine. We're going to go ahead and take our needle plate off again. And actually the thread is delivering very tightly out of here. So when I put this bobbin case in and thread it, we can actually pull and it feels very tight still. which is kind of out of the ordinary. So we're going to go ahead and adjust this by another full half turn, and then we'll test, and this is much better. Now this is delivering like it should. It's not uncommon to be able to hold a drop-in bobbin case in your hand like this and pull on it, and it has tension and will deliver the thread, but it won't move. I'm actually going to just tighten this up by just a tiny little turn. This is normal now. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and try again with our tension adjusted, and it's possible that somebody tried to adjust it on their own. Sometimes the consumer does that. You know, the sewing person will do that to try to adjust their tension, maybe for a different thread they're using, or maybe they had a problem with threading the top of the machine, so they think they can adjust it on their own by changing the bobbin tension. Whatever the reason is, we need a better quality stitch, so that's what we're shooting for. Go ahead and thread this guy back up again. And we're going to do another test. So another zigzag. And we'll take a look and see what kind of results we get. Hopefully better ones. The machine sounds really good mechanically. Sounds like everything's going smoothly. So let's take a look. Now we can see the difference here, where it does indeed, you'll see, pull maybe just a slight bit on one side. We have a great stitch on top. It is actually pulling up a little bit on top, so I'm actually going to increase that lower tension just a hair, but we've got a pretty good looking stitch now compared to before here and to here. That's what we want with the Janome machine. But we can see where it pulls up a little bit every once in a while, and I would like to see it pull on this side over here just a little bit more. That's normal. So we're going to increase our lower tension just a hair more to get the stitch we want. So we'll go ahead and remove our needle plate screws again. Again, balancing tensions on these machines is a little bit of a pain in the butt because you have to take them off every time. So we're going to go ahead, make our adjustment here. Just a little bit tighter. Pop this guy back in. Tighten these down. And we're going to take another run at it. I got like one more space on my stitch out that I can use to balance tensions on. Give it a good run. And I did my stitch out just to the side of that zigzag. Top looks great. Pulling just a little bit on the bottom on one side, which is normal for a Janome. Way better than before here. And we're ready to sew this guy in.